I have another YouTube channel named Matt and Ari React, and on this channel I go ahead and I talk with a good friend of mine named Ariana about movies. One of the reactions we had was not to a movie trailer though. It was to the TV intro of Tales from the Darkside. No, it's not one of, it is the most spookiest and creepiest and foreboding television intro TV theme that I've ever heard in my life. The theme to it used to scare me to death when I was a child, and it unrattled me all the way to into my late teens. There was a long period of time where I couldn't even listen to it. Every single time I watched Tales from the Dark Side, I would go ahead and I would turn down the volume until the intro was over. And I did that up until probably my late teens, maybe a little bit earlier than that. And of all the horror anthology series, Tales from the Dark Side is my favorite of all the horror anthologies. It has has something of a slight edge, well, probably more a slight edge over Tales from the Crypt, the series. Tales from the Dark Side may be part of his nostalgia or whatever, but I just really dig that series. My favorite episode of Tales from the Dark Side is most likely the Grither. It is just a really well done, tense episode about a family during Christmas. I remember seeing the episode for the very first time. I just remember my jaw being left wide open by the ending. Anybody who's seen the episode knows what I'm talking about. Even if you can see it coming, it still comes something of a shock. Definitely one of the best Christmas themed stories I've seen in anything. Another one of my favorite episodes from Tales from the Dark Side was, I can't remember the exact name of the episode, but it starred Michael Warren and Lisa Bonet, and it had music by John Harrison, who was the composer of my favorite horror film of all time, Day of the Dead. He played a musician who was trying to get the right song to, I think, revive his career. And so he used his piano to go ahead and give him the perfect song, but of course give him the perfect tunes. It came at a high price. And I remember seeing the ending to that when I was a small child, what happens to Michael Warren's hand. And it was just something that I will never forget. Other great episodes of Tales from Dark Side was one with Patricia Tallman, which she played a mother who had her son, who it seems like her son is kidnapped by the father, and it seemed like the father is this bad guy, keeping her son away from her, but the father actually has a valid reason why he's keeping his son away from her. I think that episode might have been directed by Tom Savini. I'm not sure about that. I could be wrong, but I know one episode that Tom Savini did direct was Monsters Closet. I believe that was the name of the episode. That was a really good episode. There was one with I think it was Baker's Dozen with Mabel King from What's Happening, and that was a really good episode. There's just a lot. There's just a lot of episodes that can go on and on and on from Tales from the Dark Side. Tales from the Dark Side was originated in part by George Romero. From what I heard, that originally he wanted to do a TV series based on Creepshow, his film Creepshow, but for rights issues of whatever, he couldn't get that done, so he had to go ahead and go from making a Creepshow series to a horror anthology based on this concept, Tales from the Dark Side. In fact, George Romero had written the first episode of Tales from the Dark Side, one of my favorite episodes of the series, a Halloween episode, the first of two Halloween themed series of the episode. I don't know if it was called Halloween Candy, but it was just this episode about this old guy who would go ahead and mess with the kids in the neighborhood by having them come to his mansion or something like a mansion, and it's whichever kid was brave enough to go ahead and find the money hidden in his household would go ahead and have the debts of their family wiped away clean and all that. But he would play this game really dirty, so these kids would never ever find this particular, I think it was a list of the debts, I think in a bag or something. And of course he gets his comeuppance in the end by one of the most spookiest witches I've ever seen. And then there was the second Halloween themed episode. This one was directed by Tom Savini. I think that one was called Halloween Candy, but it was episode that took place at least at the time at modern day, because the first episode took place like decades before, and about another older guy. This guy also wasn't nice to children, but that wasn't really the focus of it. This guy was just being just an asshole to his son, an asshole to the kids in the neighborhood, and then he comes across one trick-or-treater who he should have been nice to. This episode also has some creepy moments in it as well, particularly with cockroaches. But yeah, I could go on and on about this series, but yeah, this series is a classic. There was a movie, a feature film that came in 1990, which is decent. I wouldn't put Tales from the Darkside the same level as the 1970s Tales from the Crypt movie or Demon Knight, or as good as other anthology horror movies, but it is decent, and it's definitely worth watching, particularly the last story. The last story is really, really well done. But yeah, the series is the best though, the TV series. Tales from the Darkside is one of the earlier and best examples of horror anthology television done right. These awesomely creepy and memorable tales should be and will be told again and again for as long as tales will be told.